Okay, so we've talked about the barbell strategy. We've talked about the sweet spot, the reliable side of the bar. We've talked about the asymmetric bets and what that means. But just as importantly, I want to talk about the middle of the bar and how you recognize that you're in the middle of the bar. So think about a barbell, for example, right? Like you don't load weight in the middle of the bar. You load it here and you load it here. Why? Because the middle of the bar, first of all, it'd be really difficult to lift up a barbell if you've got weights in the middle. It's very unstable, right? You might be able to balance a barbell by loading weight in the middle. And I think people typically think of balance as if like it's got to be in the middle. But that's why this barbell framework is so powerful, because that bar is so strong when you have both sides. And yes, you might be able to balance something in the middle of the bar, but it's wobbly, it's unstable. And that's why you're feeling this like back and forth. And you have these days where it's like, oh my God, it's just pure elation. Everything's going right. And then the next day, it just feels like everything's going wrong. That right there is just a general sense that you're in the middle of the bar. And it's nothing to be like, we've all found ourselves in the middle of the bar, right? And in fact, most businesses, they kind of start out there. You've got to move it and work to get it to be reliable. But that should be the goal, is to try to move things out of the middle of the bar and over to the reliable side, or make it an asymmetric bet. We want to get things out of the middle. So how that might show up, for one, you get this sense when you just feel like this, oscillating and, kind of tipping back and forth between it's going really well, it's going really bad. That's one way to know. Another way to know is when it's just things feel really complicated. You're trying to do a million different things. And I see this in my own business. I see this in a lot of other people's businesses. They're trying to sell a SaaS product. They're trying to buy Airbnbs. They're trying to flip houses. They're trying to raise money. They're trying to do all of these things all at once. And that's where it can feel really complicated. It's not simple at all, right? You're doing a million different things. And so it's okay to have exposure to things, but we want to either keep it on the asymmetric side, where your downside risk is low. Maybe the energy and the effort you're putting in is low. If it goes well, great. If it doesn't, I didn't spend a ton of time on it. I like bets like that. It's where you've got 3 businesses you're building all at once. Do as I say, not as I do, because this is something I still struggle with, right? And again, I think it goes back to humans are hardwired towards trying to do more things. It's very counterintuitive to try to like narrow your focus, because we think that the more irons in the fire, the better chance we're going to have at success. But in reality, and in my experience, that's just not true. You've got to find a way to narrow the focus over time. It's okay to do that at the beginning, but if your business is complicated, you're trying to serve too many clients, narrow the focus. That's one way to get it out of the bar. Again, you also know you're in the middle of the bar if you're struggling with your income, if you're not paying yourself, if you're not actually getting cash out of your business into your bank account to help fund the life that you want. It's going to feel back and forth. You're going to feel that sense constantly. And everybody who's listening to this video probably knows exactly what I mean, because we've all been there. So you got to pay yourself, even if it's a small amount. You got to start building that reliability. You sleep better at night when you know you have a certain amount of cash coming in. That's what we got from our W-2s. That's what we get from reliability. So we want to try to start shifting towards that, paying yourself. If you're constantly reinvesting every dollar back into the business, it's always going to feel like this back and forth. So there's a certain amount of money we all need to live the life that we want. The goal is to try to get that business to fund that, obviously. I think it goes without saying, if you're stressed out constantly, that's an example of middle of the bar. When you're white knuckling and you're firefighting inside your business, that is an indication you're in the middle of the bar. You should be working to improve the process. And that takes a lot of restraint. It takes a lot of restraint to not chase after a million things. It takes a lot of restraint to recognize that there's a few things that you do better than anybody else could ever do. And you've got to give yourself permission to start playing inside of that arena. Otherwise, you're going to be stressed out constantly trying to do everything. Ask me how I know, right? So if you're stressed out constantly, that's an indication you're in the middle of the bar. holes all over your bucket, like if you don't have your finances in order, if you don't have your operations, your systems, your processes, your people, that stuff's got to come first. Before we hit the growth pedal, we've got to get those things under control, because otherwise you're just running a race against yourself. It's inefficient. And that money means a lot. Those resources, those currencies mean a lot to small businesses. So we've got to make sure we're allocating things correctly. And the hard part about this is, as you continue to go up in revenue in your business, it continues to grow. The things that worked at one level will stop working at the next level. So it's about recapturing and reallocating, as Dan Nicholson and Nick Peterson like to say. You've got to, that's a constant process. And so shift out of this scale. I can't stress that enough. That's probably the most dangerous thing for an entrepreneur, is to just focus on more. Your business will grow if you focus on getting better at your processes, your systems. I think we all understand that, but in practice, it's a lot easier said than done. So if you're wasting a lot of energy and effort, again, it's going to feel like this back and forth all the time. We want to be moving up and to the right consistently, not going like this all over the board. And then lastly, pay attention to your relationships, pay attention to your health, pay attention to your energy levels. Burnout's a real thing. You stay in the middle of the bar for too long, you're going to feel burned out. So if you're feeling burned out, you're probably in the middle of the bar. And guess what? That's okay. All of these things can be fixed. It takes time, but they can all be fixed. It's about making small changes, the 1 to 2 things each and every day that count, that are moving the needle from the middle of the bar over to the reliable side. Keep those asymmetric bets, these home run bets that if it goes well, you collapse the time to get to your goals, to your solvable problem. If they don't hit, big deal. We still got this reliable side. So use this as a way to identify what it feels like when you're in the middle of the bar. And if it feels like you're in the middle of the bar, just recognize that shame and guilt is probably coming right behind that. That's a natural part of being human. So don't beat yourself up too bad, right? We want to continue making decisions that can move that business towards reliability, and just recognize what it feels like when you're in the middle of the bar.